Hello and welcome to QML 23. We're happy to have you with us for this month's session, and we're excited to have Abelardo Cruz, Group 1 President, as our host this month. And we will be discussing You Matter with Mike Statement 23, which is my direct supervisor shows interest in me as a person, not just an employee. So very quickly, let me go over our agenda for today. We will be looking at the year-to-date data on Statement 23, and we'll also have a chance for you to see a brief video from a focus group around this statement. And then the bulk of the time will be Roberto sharing some best practices, some thoughts, some ideas, some action items that we can all employ. And so with that, I'm happy to turn things over to Abel Cruz. Hi, Abel.
Thank you, Jeremy, and thanks everyone else for participating in this session. This is a very interesting subject we're going to talk about today, and we start and kick it off with this graph. Nice colors, right? Red, black, green. What does it mean? And let's talk about meaning as we go through this conversation today. But if we look at numbers, this is not very clear specifically for the purpose, because sometimes the numbers don't let us see through what the meanings behind the words are. So if we look at the numbers here specifically, 2019 is pending, it's green. Right now it's empty. Where you see that blue arrow there, it's going to be filled up soon with an answer, a response from most of our team members. They're going to tell us what they think. But if we look behind that, 2017 and then 2018, we actually improved. It's a better number. Well, does it really reflect what our team members think? Let's go on to the next slide and reflect a little bit more. Let's look at each one of the years broken up by segments of our team members, right? In some cases we have on our left, and just watch for something here. The graph is actually reverse, right? So if you look at the left, you look at the, bluish color, deeper blue color, or purple, depending on how you have your screen set up. That's 2018. Then you look at the lighter blue in the center, that's 2017, and then the gray color is 2016. So what's going on here? We're actually not going in the right direction, right? It's actually getting worse every year. So 2016, if we look at the agent level, 322. That's a great number. I mean, our goal is to be at 320, and when we're at 3 or higher, we're celebrating. We're very happy. But if we look at 2017, we actually went backwards, 294. So not a good number. And then 2018, a little bit better than 2017. So that's at the agent level. That's all of those folks that are on the phones or working a back office or working chats or emails or cases for our company on those clients that we serve. How about their supervisors? 314, 2016, then 309, then 267. Oof, quite a dip. So what happened? We need to reflect on it, analyze it, assess it. Maybe there's something we are missing. And at management level, it repeats itself. 313, 306, and then 294. Again, the numbers might tell us one thing. What's behind the numbers? What is each one of those that are answering this statement's assessments when we present it? What are they thinking? Let's see what we heard from past surveys. Here's the verbatim. Some are great. For example, top left. Very true. My supervisor understands me and took good care of me. Supports me in every step I take. That's fantastic. That's great. Now, is it referring only to work? I don't know. It might be work related. It might be that this individual was getting support in other areas of his or her life. How about the other one, lower? My supervisor shows interest in me as a person, especially in my personal growth. Wow. That's not speaking about work. That's speaking about that individual as a person. He shows me my capabilities and potential relatively to my personality, talents, and my skills, not just as a person, as well as an employee. Wow. That's very interesting. How about in the center? Motivates me in doing my job well and sees my effort and corrects my mistakes in a professional way. Well, part of leadership, right? Part of supervisors is we need to guide our team members and help them do their job right. If they make a mistake, we need to help them correct it. Great. That talks a lot about work. Lower left, let's read this one. She takes good care of her team and always shows compassion towards us. Wow. That doesn't tell me much about work. It tells me that person feels something else at work. How about on the top right side? Our leader is humble and compassionate in many ways. Being a leader is a choice, and being a leader is to provide a good example to your followers. Wow. They're talking about leadership here. They're talking about someone they can mimic, they can follow in how they act and do things. A team leader is someone who provides guidance, instruction, direction, and leadership to a group of individuals. So they're going a little bit more in a definition of a leader. Then down to our right, yes, my supervisor shows her genuine interest towards me and treats me like one of the family as well. Well, that's quite interesting. These are comments from those folks that answered these surveys before. We didn't guide them. We didn't tell them, hey, answer this, answer that. We just, asked them to answer the survey, and they came back and they provided this feedback. What does this tell us? Maybe most of those folks answering the surveys are interpreting something different than what we think. Now, we did something else. Jeremy took a next step, and he said, hey, let's ask those live in a training environment without any prompting, without any training, without any guidance, what they thought when they heard this statement. And let's hear what they had to say.
So I have Michael Whitlow-Levy as a supervisor, and every day he knows everybody on our team's communication styles, which is kind of coincidental to this class, but he knows, hey, this person's not right, and he'll ask them, hey, are you doing okay? And if there's a problem, he will call them over to his desk and talk to them about what's going on. If they want to not talk about it now or later, but he will always make sure that his team matters. Every employee matters personally, not professionally.
My supervisor is Lucinda Fontaine, and the very first day that I got on her team, she actually told me that she was interested in me as a person. Those were her exact words, and asked me where I wanted to go, what did I want to do within the company, and how can she help me make that happen. And here I am now doing that readiness. I feel like I'm growing in the company. I feel like there's opportunity for me, and that was because of her. And it wasn't just her taking interest in me as the employee. It was great as an employee. How can we launch your life? And that's how I feel. So I feel like she's really helped me as a person grow outside of work because of what she's done for me at work.
My supervisor is Austin Walker, and I went through some really tough times. I was living in a shelter and trying to find housing. Not only was he always there as a support system, but he also helped me find the resources that I need, set me up with the chaplain here so I could get part of the benevolence fund to pay for a deposit at my apartment complex, and always just checks on me to make sure everything's still good. So definitely the best supervisor I've ever had.
One of the things that I really do appreciate is that if it is that you want to talk to her about something, she takes the time to take you in her office and, you know, have that one-on-one discussion, and you never hear back about it. It's basically you and her personal time, and that's just something that I would really, really appreciate.
My supervisor is Jordan Hepmer, and she kind of stepped into a role that was, we kind of all looked at it as cursed, because it was a new program, our you can outbound program. And she's really stepped up, and she's helped a lot of people. I know recently she was helping me when my son was getting bullied. She told me she would be there for me, so she's really stepped up. She's a great supervisor, and I appreciate everything she does at work and, you know, outside of work.
When people say that they don't think their supervisors are doing that, they're not giving them the chance, or they're really not bringing these things to them, because the people around here, they really do care, and I truly believe that. So.
Well, very powerful. We didn't know what to expect. So let's reflect. We just heard from them live in this recorded video. Thank you, Jeremy. Now, when we ask them, when we place the statement, does your supervisor treat you as, etc., etc., who and what do they think a supervisor is? Who are they thinking about? Is it someone in a position of authority? Maybe. Manages others and has responsibility over the work produced by others? Most likely, that's a typical definition of a manager, right? Supervisor. They might also think he or she is ultimately an employee as well, who has a supervisor to whom he or she reports to. That's the reality, right? They typically report to someone else as well. By being a supervisor, they have to oversee. They have to see over others so that, you know, there could be correction or direction given to others when they're trying to fulfill their group's commitments. They need to guide them. It also assumes, when we think about the word supervisor, that this individual defines expectations, deadlines. He or she calibrates others and helps them be guided. He guides them through the path. Now, we also are using the word employee. Does my supervisor treat me as a person, not only as an employee? So what do the people, the persons, individuals, when they're hearing this word, might think? Well, we know that an employee typically is somebody that is hired in a company, in a group, to work with others, and he or she put his or her talents at the service of the group to fulfill existing commitments that that group, that company has made to others, typically clients, internal or external. And that typically represents a contractual relationship. It's a transactional relationship or responsibility. Someone that is responsible typically looks at that contract, that does what is there, and typically if that person's really deliberately wanting to do great, they will do more than what the contract says. Now, having said this, how do we work on these meanings to get more benefiting to our team members? How do we transform all of this and make this be helpful to us? Let's see the next slide. We can think that a supervisor is a different person, an individual, a different sorts, a different caliber, a different level, but at the end of the day, hey, there's something common between those two individuals, the supervisor and the employee. Both wish, want, dream, strive for. They both desire things in their lives. Supervisor as well as employee both have families or come from and perhaps take care of a family. They might have a significant other they love they take care of. They have some higher being that they look up to for guidance, to imitate, to follow, to trust, and perhaps to talk to. Both supervisor as well as employee have concerns for health, for delivering their promises at work, for doing what's right, for expanding their career and their future. Both have to pay their bills at a month, at a week, at a bi-weekly basis. They have to pay bills. We individually and as a group, regardless if I'm a supervisor or an employee, we're always in a relationship with others, regardless of title, regardless of responsibility. Although these concerns or components are common domains for all of us, we might have different intensity, different focus at different moments in time, and different flavor, taste, different colors or shades. We are all unique. And that's the beauty here. We are each one single individual. We're all one unique person. Having understood this, what do we do with this? How can we take this to the next step? Well, I would ask you to reflect by yourself and then with your own teams. What does the word employee, person, and people mean to you and to your team? What do they mean? Does people take us to think group, collective? Is it many? How about the term employee? Does it take us to think work only? Does it limit us from thinking he or she is an individual, a person that has concerns and worries and desires and dreams? How about the term people? We use it a lot. We think typically collective interests or needs or concerns versus individual versus one person. So we tend to group. Can I actually put a face behind the term people? Or do I think person if I want to put a face behind that name? I think I would typically think person. Given that both team members and supervisors are individuals like you and I, well, we'll have shared concerns. Then that allows me to address each individual person, singularity. Does that help me when I think people, or do I really need to think person? I think if I want to address them individually, I have to think person. So what do I do with this? Well, I can go to the next steps and I can start with myself. I can start by looking at my team members as well in their human domains. Those domains of concerns they all have, that I have, and move my mind, my thinking from he or she is an employee to he and or she is a person. And he and she have very similar domains of concerns that I have as well. Let's avoid the collective when we work on assessing issues. Let's avoid saying, people always do this. Those individuals in that group. Let's think about individuals and individual cases, and maybe if we assess like that, we'll have better scoring. Care for each person and challenge them to care for each person in their teams. And that has never to stop. Every time, every opportunity. And that's why we need to persevere, because it's going to take effort. It's not going to work the first time around. It's going to take us to do it over and over again and keep on working in our minds and keep on working with our teams. For that, we need to drive the conversation. We need to ensure we replace the term people for person. First in our thinking, and then as we act accordingly. Because typically the way we think is the way we act. Now, please be patient. Hasn't someone been patient with us ever since we were little? Hasn't that higher being that we might trust on been patient with us over and over again in our lives? Well, be patient with others. Be patient with yourselves. Because, hey, we're going to do our best. We're going to do our effort to replace that way of thinking people and then move towards thinking person. But it's going to take effort. It's going to take prayer. And it's going to take many, many, many practices over and over again. But hey, if we do it, I'm sure tomorrow, next year, 2 years from now, it doesn't matter when, we're going to think individually versus collective. And we're going to treat those that work with us not only as an employee, but as a person like myself. Now, let's open this up to questions and answers.
Thank you very much, Roberto. And we have about 9 minutes, which is awesome, for questions, comments from any of you. You can use the question and answer tab. You can also use chat. And between myself, Al, and Matt, we'll try and catch those questions and make sure that we all get answers to all of those. So feel
Jeremy?
free to chime in. Al, please.
I would like to be Roberto, because Abel does all this great presentation, and you gave all the credit to Roberto.
Oh, I am sorry.
So, you know, the next time give it to me, and
Okay.
you know, we'll keep inviting Abelardo here, but we get the credit.
Great. Sorry, Abel.
No, don't worry, Jeremy. It's great. It's even better because then it doesn't get to my head, my friend.
Thank you. So,
do you want us to monitor the questions, Jeremy?
yes, if you would do that, and until we get started, I might. Oh, we've got a question from Marco, actually. So for Abel, he says, what would you recommend to prepare for a prior meeting with someone who reports to you? So I guess prior to the meeting, what would you recommend to prepare for a prior meeting with someone who reports to you?
Thank you, Jeremy. I think that if we truly want to move from employee only, from thinking about people and thinking about person, then we need to train ourselves into reflecting first. What am I thinking before the meeting? And reflecting on that, observing myself and saying, hey, am I thinking about just addressing work-related issues? Or am I going to also ask him or her, how is he or she doing? How's their family? How are their kids? So if I don't have those questions ahead of time in my mind, it's a good opportunity to prepare and maybe prep them up in your mind, maybe write them up and say, hey, I want to address these things, not only work, I'm going to address him or her in more domains than only work. And if we do that recurrently, they will then in turn imitate that and do it with others. And it's going to replicate itself throughout the company.
Thank you very much. Here's another question. This is from Myra. She says, how can we supervisors approach our team so they can openly and confidently let us know if they feel we are not caring enough?
Oof, that's a good, very good question. It all begins with, back to we are a person-to-person organization that we want to become. And sometimes we're not there yet, right? In many cases, we're in the process and working on it. And many might think that we are the boss. And because we're the boss, there's this wall in between us. And there's this authority and this separation between us. So we need to break those walls by bridging into the person And if we do that and we build the trust over time and we ask them for feedback, when they provide the feedback, we take it positively and we do things with it and we fix things and address them. They're going to trust that they can actually open up with us. They're going to trust that they can trust us. So it's going to take time, but we have to take the first step.
Perhaps I can chime in and share a couple of tips, Jeremy, there.
Please.
Once I remember having a person I reported to, and he was very, very good, very effective type of individual and manager. And he used two very simple techniques over and over again. One was humor. He injected humor every time he could. You know, a 60-minute meeting would not turn into a circus, of course, but there will be always a little bit of humor. Kind of showing himself he was a human being as well. And melting that ice that Abelardo is perhaps referring to, of that covers that boss, right? And let him or her being seen as a human being. And the other thing that he did a lot is talk about himself, you know, his experiences, good and bad. The bad ones are very important because it shows how much of a human being he is. She also makes mistakes, and perhaps everybody else learns from those mistakes. So a couple of tips that I learned a long time ago, and I thought it helped to, you know, get closer to your employees. No.
Thank you. I don't know if all of you saw this in the chat, and Roberto chimed right in and answered the question, but someone said lots of focus on the person rather than people. I love the direction. Would we relook at our mission statement? Because people is part of our mission statement. And Roberto says, yes, Mike has been thinking on that as well. So a good thought there.
Jeremy, this is Matt. I agree with everything Buddy's saying. I just wanted to add that in any kind of relationship, one thing that I always am talking about and trying to do is to add value to that person, even in difficult conversations. Work hard at that, trying to find ways to add value to that person, and it's unique to every individual in every situation. But always be looking for that possibility, and that really builds a lot of trust in that relationship, which takes us to a lot of the points that Abel and Al are talking about in there. So I just thought I'd chip that in there.
Thank you very much. A great comment here in the chat that says, I agree, humor is very effective. The slippery slope for leaders is staying away from sarcasm. I thought that was a great reminder for everyone. We still have just about 2 minutes left. So Nikki, just so you know, Abel, Nikki says she finds you believable. So that's good.
Thank you.
Good. All right.
All right. Hey, Nikki, Abel is sending you $100 check as we speak here. I see him writing it.
Roberto says, important is a company that has a lot of, important in a company that has a lot of diversity, and the humor is a cultural trait that is not the same everywhere. Okay, good point, Roberto. And lots of folks chiming in with positive responses, and we surely appreciate that. And so, Abel, I'm going to just kind of give you the last minute or two to kind of close out and give us your final thoughts here, if that's okay.
Sure. Thank you, Jeremy. So this is just the beginning, meditating on what one thing means versus what other things means, and how we interpret it, and how others that work with us and are under our care might think about these things is the beginning. Now, having that into our mindset, we can start working on refining those meanings in how we interact with others and how we act. At the end of the day, it's all about trust. If we follow a path of doing what we're saying, and we're saying that we want to treat others like a person, that we don't want to be a supervisor of employees only, but we would really want to treat them as a person, that has many other domains, then we can say it, but we need to act accordingly. And if we start on that path, trust me, others are going to imitate us. And as that happens, many, many, many others in the company will do the same. So I trust if you do this, there's going to be many positive changes in Qualfon. Thank you. And God bless you all.
Thank you, Abel, very much. Please remind your coworkers that aren't on this session that we have a session tomorrow and Friday, and we don't want anyone to miss this, right? Thank you very much, Abel. Thank you to all of our panelists, and thank you to all of you for joining. And we will see you for QML 24 next month. Take care, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, Abel. Thank you, Jeremy.
Bye-bye. Thanks, Abel.